Welcome to the RPG Rundown. I'm Seth.
And I'm Jeff. From Dungeons to Deep Space, we've got the systems and the stories for your table. Today on episode 10, we're reviewing the Daggerheart Beta. Now, both Seth and I have had a chance to play the Darrington Press and Critical Role TTRPG that was released for open beta on March 12th. Today, we're going to talk about all of our experiences, the beta documents, our playtests, our thoughts, maybe some of our concerns. So we'll be deep diving kind of into those today. I'm pretty excited. This has been a really fun system. I've been pumped about it. It was fun to DM. Seth's had a chance to DM it and play it. So yeah, you ready for this?
Absolutely. So, we're just going to dive right into it. We're starting off kind of with what we have played, which is usually, if you're familiar, at the end of our episodes. But because pretty much all we've played is Daggerheart, at least for me, in the last few
Yeah.
weeks, so that's what we're going to dive into. So, I will mention briefly for any of you who are like, wait a second, weren't they supposed to play Avatar Legends? The answer is yes. We did attempt a play session for it. However, we ran into a few issues, so we're going to give it a second attempt later. So, a lot more to say about that then.
Sure.
But for now, we're diving into Daggerheart because
Oh yeah. Well, it just drops.
it
We had
dropped.
to. It was huge.
Absolutely. So like Jeff mentioned, it dropped on March 12th,
Hmm.
which happened to be a Tuesday night, which is my personal campaign's normal streaming and recording evening. We had a couple players who had some real life stuff come up and they weren't going to be able to play. So I just proposed it early that day. Hey, maybe we should try Daggerheart. And they all were like, yeah, let's give it a
Yeah.
go. So, my personal campaign is Hearth and Hammer. Some of you may be familiar with it. If not, you can definitely check it out. It is on Twitch. We stream on a Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central from about 8 to 10 p.m. And it's twitch.tv/Hearth and Hammer. We also have a YouTube channel. I am so far behind on uploading stuff to that, but I'm going to
Me
make
too.
sure to put the Daggerheart VOD on there because it'll disappear from Twitch pretty quick. So that's going to be up there. Absolutely.
Hmm.
But so I normally have 5 players. I had 3 that created characters, and we started going through the Daggerheart playtest material. So it was a lot of fun GMing it. We're going to get into the full discussion of this shortly,
Hmm.
but Jeff, I'm pretty sure you have had a similar experience. GMing this
Hmm.
quick start and beta was phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
not just phenomenal, but it was one of the best onboarding to a new TTRPG experiences I've ever had,
Absolutely.
hands down.
Yeah.
So,
So
and we'll get
you
into that,
actually
but yeah, go ahead and let us
right.
know your first take on it.
Sure. So you actually mentioned it to me on Tuesday that you guys were going to play it, and you invited me to play. I was unfortunately not able to make it to play, but I pitched it to my guys, to my D&D crew. Now we're in the middle of a campaign and actually leading up to some pretty big stuff. But I'm like, hey, Daggerheart dropped. You guys check this out, and I sent them a couple of videos, and within an hour, like several of them had responded. They were super excited about it. And one of my guys actually got on, and within like a day, he'd created like 6 characters on Demiplane, and what didn't even know which one he wanted to play. And so I was like, guys, how do you feel about on Friday night, rather than running our normal campaign, why don't we try to test play Daggerheart? And so we invited Seth to join us. He jumped in there with us, and we got to test play it on Friday night, which is my normal stream D&D session. We stream later nights, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Central Time.
So late.
Twitch so late. It is late. And it's catching up to me. I'm getting to that age where I'm starting to feel a little bit too. But 11 p.m. 2 a.m. at twitch.tv/Dr. Hills if you ever want to come in and watch that. But yeah, no, I mean, I'd watched a bunch of videos. I'd read a lot of the rule book, which is awesome. Everything is on. You can get the PDFs and stuff directly from the Daggerheart website, but then everything else is on Demiplane as well. So That worked out really well. No, you're it. The starter adventure is like every starter adventure should be. I feel like because it's like it leads you
Oh
through
yeah.
step by step. It's really it. I don't know. To me, it's like the perfect way to teach a TTRPG. Like there's, it literally sets you up, and then even for the GM, it has steps like, okay, if they roll with hope, then do this. If they succeed with fear, then do
Yeah.
that. I don't know. It's a great intro adventure. I agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. And
Mhm.
I know both of us proposed to our players, we should do this again sometime.
Oh, absolutely.
For me, and you'll remember this because, again, if you know Jeff and I introduced Jeff to D&D and
Good.
TTRPGs.
Yeah.
I had the great pleasure and privilege to do so.
Absolutely.
And he actually played in my Hearth and Hammer campaign for
Mhm.
a year and a half, I
Year and a
think.
half. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, year and a half. And so then he broke off and he, again, proud papa moment. He went and he started his own D&D campaign. No,
I did.
no, it was fantastic.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
so glad. And it's also fun to have a GM that we can talk about things now outside of it. So,
Hmm.
but I said, you know what? We had this thing for our first campaign where on any day that we didn't have everyone together, we ran Hearth and Hammer Adventures, which was we created all new characters and we basically just started in another part of the world, and we basically just had kind of a secondary campaign for fun that we
Hmm.
ran. So I have proposed to do that with Daggerheart once we, either get through the quick start because we didn't finish
Yeah.
it, but you know, to sum up, my players enjoyed it. They liked the idea. So, and
Okay.
I think I know you had mentioned something because I was there
Right.
about
Yeah.
trying to continue on at least for a few sessions, maybe,
Hmm.
maybe not immediately, but I know you were pretty excited too.
Right. Yeah. Even our Discord chat has kind of been everybody's been talking about how much they enjoyed it and stuff. So I think this week we're definitely planning to just continue working our way through the quick start
Awesome.
adventure, and then once we get to the end, we'll go from there.
All right, perfect. Well, hey, I will plan to be there, barring
Oh,
any
perfect.
unforeseen circumstances. So,
Absolutely. That
um,
is the big bad of TTRPGs,
that's right, scheduling
real life.
and unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's get into our presentation
Mm, do it.
because I already have some stuff pulled up to show off. First, the Daggerheart website. It is daggerheart.com, like you might expect. And again, Daggerheart is a TTRPG that has been written and developed and is continuing to be written and developed by Darrington Press, which is the publishing arm of Critical Role. Critical Role has, um, I think this is a culmination of all of the things that they love to do, and this is very much how and what they want to do when they play the game.
Mhm.
Um, but they released the open beta, and so the website is live. I know Jeff mentioned earlier, Demiplane has a Nexus site for Daggerheart with a character creator and all the resources for free. Fantastic character creator.
Absolutely.
Um, I only have a couple small complaints, and we'll address that here in a little bit. But it's beta. It's beta.
It is beta. Kind of surprising.
Absolutely. So I'm just gonna go real quick, and I'm just gonna read what's actually in the beta playtest packet. First, because if you're looking at the screen on the Love Thy Nerd YouTube channel,
Mhm.
there are two buttons. One says playtest surveys and play Daggerheart, and so you can download the playtest material there, and then you can
It should be noted,
also
all this is
take a
free
survey.
too,
All
by the
this
way.
is completely free,
Completely free.
which is really impressive considering
Mhm.
the core rules, which they call the manuscript or something like that.
Mhm.
It is 377 pages
Yeah,
as a beta
it's
PDF.
beta.
It's phenomenal,
Very
and
thorough.
it's not tons of pictures. There's a good amount of sketches and concept art, but there is not a lot. It is mostly everything you need to play the game, which is fantastic. And if you look at the table of contents, it has, let's see. I'll just pull it up right now so we can look at it. Daggerheart Open Beta Playtest. They've got a lot of things in here for saying that it's still an active game development, that balancing adversaries is not quite there yet. It's exploratory. Art is all subject to change. New updates periodically to the beta playtest cycle. Even though we are in beta, you can stream your games. You can make DP. You can even make DPGL, which is Darrington Press game license. I think is what it stands for, or maybe I think that's what it is. And basically, it's their version of the OGL. Like they're gonna release this for content creators, which is fantastic. And then also too, they talk about touchstones, which are the games that inspired them to add little tidbits here and there of the rules. And we're going to go over that here in a minute. But 377-page manuscript or core rules, a 40-page quick start adventure, which is honestly a fully scripted learn-to-play experience and onboarding for both the GM and the players. It's fantastic. We'll go over that in a minute.
Say when you said, the 377-page book, honestly, I think you could pick up the quick start play test and learn to play the game from it. Honestly, the GM.
Oh, 100%.
You could pick that up, read the stuff it tells you to read to your players. It's going to also teach you how the systems work and play through it just like it tells you to, and you'll learn to play the game. It's like the tutorial in a video game, honestly.
Absolutely. 100% agree. The playtest is phenomenal, and we're going to go over that here shortly. So, also, the character sheets are not just character sheets; they're character packets. Okay, and I say that because it's a PDF. So, in PDF form, these character packets are like 10 pages. Each character class has a packet, and each class has a specific character. It's unique. So the character sheets are all the same except for one box. And that one box is what makes it unique. Just has your class abilities in it already, which is great. But then the rest of that 10-page document is literally a guide to create a character with that class. It's got suggested stats, suggested starting equipment, everything to create the character. It even has like the beginning equipment stuff. It has all of the cards because Daggerheart has cards we're going to talk about soon. And it also has all the instructions to level up characters from levels 1 to 10, which is fantastic. So, and then as part of that, like I mentioned, in those class packets, as well as in all the other materials, they have basically provided you all the things you need to print and play in person. Character tokens, the cards, action tracker, things like that. They have it in the PDF with cut lines and fold lines for you to print and to play. It's amazing. So, with that, let's talk about what Daggerheart actually is. Like, what does it do? Jeff, talk about the duality dice, hope and fear tokens, and the action tracker, if you would, please.
Sure. So in Daggerheart, it is not necessarily a D20 system, at least for the players. So that was interesting to me. You actually have, the players will use a duality dice. Those are 2 D12s. One will represent hope, one will represent fear. And so you roll your dice, and there's still a threshold that you must beat that's probably set by the GM. And you'll roll those. Now, if you beat that, then you'll succeed, obviously, but you can succeed with either hope or with fear. If you succeed with hope, then you get to take a hope token or fill a hope, and you get to use that hope for different things as you play the game. Now, on the flip side, if you succeed with fear or fail with fear, for that matter, the GM gets to take a fear. And all I had for fear tokens when I played mine was like literally nuts and bolts. So that's what I was using for my fear tokens. So every time I'd get one, you'd hear like in the mic. Right?
Nice.
Just
actually,
dramatic effect.
We didn't hear it. It cut it out. So
Oh, it cut it out. Never mind. Well, in my head, you could hear it, and it sounded amazing. Um, but yeah, so then the GM gets fear tokens, and you can use those as the GM. You can use fear for different things. Like you can use them in combat, you can use them out of combat. A lot of times, your monsters or NPCs that you're running they'll have special things that you have to use fear for, like special abilities. Rather than spell slots, you're burning fear tokens and things like that. And then same thing kind of on the other side. As the players, you're using hope to do all your abilities and things like that. I didn't play much of the player side, so Seth did get a chance to play the player side, so he'll know more about the hope. Um, but yeah, so the duality dice, and they're always giving or taking, right? And then the action tracker, which almost works in a similar way. So whenever combat happens, there's not an initiative order. It is a kind of the natural order of play. Like whoever is like in position to make an attack or make a move, they go ahead and do it. And whenever you want to make a action roll, you actually have to place a token on the action tracker. Now, basically, you just keep doing that player after player after player until one of you either fails a roll or rolls with fear. And at that point, it shifts to the GM to make what's called a GM move. Now, all of those tokens they put on the action tracker, I now get to use to make moves against the party. So, did they have 4 successful action rolls? Now I get four options to use my tokens to do different things with. So, I don't know. I love that system. I've only really got to run like the combat once and stuff, but so far it felt really fluid and really neat because sometimes the players will go on a run and they get a lot of successes, but then they also know eventually that's going to flip, and then the GM gets to make several moves. So yeah, what
yeah,
were your thoughts on it?
absolutely. And two, one of the things we didn't quite get to is that if you have fear tokens, you can always interject by spending fear
Oh,
tokens.
absolutely. Yeah, I think
Uh,
it's 2 fear tokens to interrupt
I
the
think
player
so.
moves. Yeah.
And all of these costs are listed very clearly in the
Mhm.
rules. They are as appropriate to the quick start guide. They are listed where appropriate. If you're looking at the screen, this is another one of those tools. So these are some of the tools in the PDFs that come with it as well, and these are just within the rules, within the quick start. But you do get sideboards, which are actually in the character sheets,
Right.
and they basically it's a piece of paper that you can stick underneath the right or the left of your character sheet, and it explains it. You overlap them, and it explains what you have on there. In fact, I can show you what
Yeah.
it looks like
And while you're
right
pulling that
here.
up, that is what probably one of my favorite things about the game so far is it seems like they've went way like out of their way to introduce new people to the game. Like I mean, I know Seth's taught plenty of people the game. He taught me the game, like in D&D and stuff, and I've had to do that for several people. And the fact that like that is available is amazing. Just that
Yeah.
your players that will have that, they can always pull it out to see what each thing is. So good.
Yeah, so if you looked at the screen, I tried to show you. It's in a tiny little box there because. So here, I'll do this. I'll transition back and show. So you got your character sheet, and then like I said, they printed this extra sheet, and so basically you overlap it to say, oh, that's your class, that's your armor stuff, and you move to the other side. In fact, I saw on X today, formerly Twitter, Nat One Fun is someone I follow. He actually took these pages and he basically glued them, like printed printed 2 of them, glued it to the back, and then folded them under. So that way it was all one sheet. And I thought that was awesome as
Yeah,
a
that's pretty
physical
cool.
tool. And what that did too, and I mentioned this, and here's the thing, it reminds me of the Fantasy Flight Games Genesis system. In all of their beginner boxes, especially for like the Star Wars beginner boxes, they come with character folios, which are like basically it's about 6 or 8 pages in like a little booklet for a character sheet. And so you open it up, and what happens is they actually move the character sheet to the middle of 2 pages so that there's sideboards on either side with rules and explanations. And then it actually teaches you in those character folios how to level up. And so you turn the page, and then there's a new version of the character sheet that is now leveled up, and there's the rules for how to level up on the side. So very similar, but obviously Darrington Press did their own take on it, and it is a much more literal sideboard for the sections of the character sheet, and I think it's fantastic. I love it.
Right.
One of the touchstones, and they did mention this, we'll get to it in a few minutes when we look at the touchstones, but the Genesis system was a major influence on the duality dice and the nature of rolling with hope and rolling with fear, which I called it whenever we did our initial impressions. That was kind of one of the things. But anyway, the sideboards, the class character sheets with creation and leveling, and then the play guide, which was that PDF I was showing now. This is like a 1-page PDF that players that are new can have in front of them, and it has everything that they need to basically know how to make an action roll, which is essentially a skill check or an attack. How to determine what it is, knowing which color is your fear die and your hope die ahead of time. If you rolled with fear, critical success is when you get 2 of the same number on the dice, regardless of what numbers. So you could roll double ones, and it would normally fail the action check, but because it's doubles, it is a critical success. And then again, just quick references on short rest, long rest, some quick references for advantage, disadvantages, help, stuff like that, which is amazing. Yeah, and then it also comes with multi-classing rules, which again treats it like a sideboard, and it's a half a page that you stick underneath your character sheet, and that then also gives you access to that class basically on your sideboard, which is really cool. Right. So, but yeah, I know that I kind of skipped over it here, but let me just read real fast because I don't think you have the PDF pulled up, Jeff. But their touchstones, again, they listed a ton of them. But their touchstones, it says Daggerheart gleans inspiration from a variety of sources. Below is an abridged list of media that the design team drew from while crafting this game. TTRPGs included 13th Age, Apocalypse Keys, Apocalypse World, Blades in the Dark, City of Mist, Cortex Prime, Cypher System, Dishonored, D&D, Flea Mortals, For the Queen, Genesis, Lady, Blackbird, Mask, A New Generation, Pathfinder, Shadowrun, The Quiet Year, Wildsea, and Slug Blaster. Like, that's a fantastic list of systems.
Yeah.
They also talked about, Wizards of Earthsea and Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings. They talked about movies and TV like Dragon Prince, The Witcher, Lord of the Rings again, Elder Scrolls Online. And then special appreciation, again, this is where I kind of called it. The Genesis system was a major inspiration for the 2-axis results of the duality die.
Right.
Cypher Systems GM intrusions paved the way for spending fear to interrupt a scene.
Nice.
D&D, obviously, the advantage and disadvantage was a big inspiration. They definitely do it a little different, which I like.
They do, yeah.
And it goes on. It goes on for sure. So, but you kind of mentioned it, and I'm gonna kind of show some of it now. But go ahead and let Jeff talk about the quick start again, and then I'll play. We'll go into that more now. So
sure, yeah. So the quick start. One thing I really like about the quick start is there's literally a point in it where it tells you like to read this to your players, right? And I'm pulling it up too. Like literally there's a whole section called teaching the game, and it literally has a section that covers the basics of the game. Then there's a section that covers, what action rolls are, how the duality dice works, how, fear tokens, and so it's like read this, read this, read this, read this. And like after you've read those 4 things, you're pretty much ready to play the game.
Oh, absolutely.
You are ready to play, your players are ready to play, and then like as you're playing, you're gonna be learning more about the game. And like you're playing a full-fledged adventure too. Like I mean, now they have character sheets here for you to use. I think Seth and I, both of our guys, everyone wanted to create their own characters, which I was perfectly fine with.
Same.
So we got take our characters and run through this adventure where it's pretty good. But for the GM, it has what to read, what's going to happen, what happens when you roll a certain way. But yeah, honestly, uh, I'm 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 in agreement here. This is probably the best quick start adventure I've ever seen.
Oh, hands down. It's the
So
best
good.
quick start, best onboarding.
Right.
I mean, I can't wait to see this thing polished, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that
Because
it's not considered polished is crazy. It's so good.
right. And
Yeah.
if you're watching the VOD, this kind of shaded concept art is throughout all the documents.
Mhm.
Um, but again, this is what I want to show you. This is one of the pre-made characters. If you are going to run the pre-made characters, this character has to be in it. It plays to the story. Again, we aren't doing it, but that's okay. We're gonna just. I feel like we're strong enough GMs. We can do it without it.
Right.
But then it has the character sheet for this person, but also has, this is what I wanted to show off here. It has the print and play option, a character token there. Fantastic. And then again, showing off this particular pre-made character's character sheet, the sideboard for that character sheet. And then what it does have is colored examples of the cards. And this is something that I'm just going to show here. I think because we try to stick within a limited amount of time for this podcast and video,
Mhm.
we are not going to be able to cover everything in depth. I
Yeah.
think we will have to maybe have some shorts or some other videos sometime if we do want to cover some of those.
Absolutely.
And we will have an actual play on our actual play channel at some point. We'll go ahead and record one of those for it too, so that'll be a little bit more long form. But when you make a character, every character has an ancestry, which is akin to race. They have a community, which is basically the town or village or wherever you were raised, and then it also has a subclass card. So this character is an elf. They are a sorcerer with the primal origin, and then they are loreborn. So their community is loreborn. Not going to go into that, but there's different communities that you could be raised in. You could be raised in the wilds, raised in a rich family, raised in all sorts of things. And then there's domain cards, which domain cards are basically your class abilities and spells.
Right.
And I say that because if you're a fighter, obviously it's not a spell. It's going to be an ability. But again, this gives a great breakdown of the makeup of the card. So for example, this domain card, Rain of Blades, it has a recall cost. What that means is as you level up, you gain more domain cards. You can only have 5 active at a time, but you can actually spend a stress, which is a resource in the game, to pull an inactive ability out of your vault in the middle of battle or whatever. Awesome mechanic.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then it gives all the rules there for it. So, and then there's some more characters, but like we were talking about, I'm going to scroll down here to where it talks about the learn to play. Awesome. It talks about the game master adventure and what we were saying, teaching the game. This section, if you have the PDF, you could literally not read anything, sit down at a table or online with a group and start in this section. And by the end of it, all of you will know how to play.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like you don't need to read the rule
so
book.
Impressive to me.
It really is. And so these little kind of grayed out boxes are what you read out loud. And like I said, it has you read out loud the teaching mechanics. We're quickly going to cover the basics of what you need to know to start playing. And it just goes on from there. It's fantastic. So talks about action rolls. You have them take, it even sets aside time for you and the players to take a look at your character sheets. Talks about rolling and everything. Talks about combat and the action tracker, which is a physical thing, and just moves on from there. Teaching the game then continued. And then every one of these little things on the page that you see here are acts, and they're basically single page story elements that you get through. Myself and my group made it through the first two, Act 1 and 2. Actually, I think we only made it through Act 1, maybe. But that's okay.
Right.
Because honestly, doing the character creation is really important to do as a group, to give yourself at least a little time, even if just for like a micro session 0, because they have you connect with all the other players in such a way that it makes telling stories together way more easy. So,
yeah, the connections. I was actually talking to a friend today. We're playing disc golf, but he's also a TTRPG guy. And they did the connections. They spent a ton of time. He says his favorite part of the game so far is just the connections themselves.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So good.
Incredible. So good. But again, that is us trying to encompass everything about this in the PDFs. I'm going to switch over here real fast just to show you Demiplane. 100% go to demiplane.com and then click on the Daggerheart Nexus and just peruse everything. It's free.
Oh, yeah.
You can create characters, and they absolutely do an amazing job. My only complaint is that, and it's really just due to the nature of it being a beta, we don't really have the ability for the character sheets to interact yet, like D&D Beyond, where if I roll, if I roll in the character sheet, because it has the ability to roll like an agility roll, or if I want to attack with my short staff,
right,
I can come down here, it pops it up just like D&D Beyond. If I have advantage, I can click advantage, which gives me a D6, and it gives me a +2. I can hit roll. And look at that. I rolled with fear because the fear die came up higher than the hope die. But I still got a 16, so I could have succeeded.
Right, could have succeeded.
I just, a small minor negative consequence came out of it. So love it. It's fantastic. Highly recommend you check it out.
Absolutely.
For sure. But I want to talk a little bit about the mechanics that stood out. We don't have a whole lot of time left, so we're going to try to do this briefly.
Very quickly. Okay. All right.
But action rolls, including advantage, disadvantage, and tokens. What is your first impression of that?
So, wow, I just blanked on that question. So one thing I liked about advantage and disadvantage is rather than like in, say most D20 systems, you roll just 2 dice, take the higher. In this, you actually just get to take a D6 and add it or subtract it if it's disadvantage. So I feel like that's pretty nice. That's almost, always a benefit. Action rolls themselves, I think using the duality dice, I don't know, it feels very fluid, and it kind of gives, you can succeed, but then it's bad, or you can succeed and it's very good, or you can like critically succeed with 2 1s, which is really cool. I don't know. I didn't think I was going to like the 2d12 because really it's the dice I hardly ever touch in my sets.
They're so misunderstood.
So misunderstood.
And so misused.
Yeah. So underrated.
I
don't know. I personally, I really liked it. I enjoyed it. Of course, from the DM side, I'm rolling d20s, and so
that is one thing. Absolutely, that's one thing that is some systems have. This is an asymmetrical TTRPG system, meaning that the players roll 2d12, which are called duality die, but the GM does not. The GM rolls a d20 for its attack rolls, and they're. I think it's a good reason. I think it's also because each one of the NPCs, the character that the GM is controlling, that they're not telling their story. We're telling the story of the players, and the GM is helping. So, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah,
my own.
I didn't.
Yeah, and I think too, playing in person will be a completely different experience because. The way that it is meant to be played is when you're sitting at a table with friends, you're going to roll your duality dice. But if you have any kind of modifiers, they suggest having tokens. physical tokens. So that could be like screws that are, Jeff had handy. It could be, I would say it could be other dice, but that might be confusing. They talk about glass beads or, little resin tokens or something that reminds you of your class. Like they talked about like a druid having like little leaves, like little tokens that look like leaves or something. But the whole thing is that you will roll your duality dice, and if say you have +2, you would add 2 of your tokens. That way, when you throw it into the dice tray, it's a really easy visual representation of the total that's on the duality die plus the other tokens that are in the box, just automatically. And so that is an element of it as well, that, trying to represent everything that could be added is in there. You're not having to remember, oh, well, this weapon has a +2, or I get a +2 because of rage, or I get a +5 because of fire damage, because of an ability that I cast earlier. You would literally add those pluses as tokens in your roll as physical. So that way you don't forget and everyone else can see it as well.
Right. So that's actually just a really cool concept. And I know playing at a table with a lot of newer players, keeping up with all your modifiers is actually something that's a big struggle at my table. So really cool concept. And it seems like they've actually simplified modifiers and stuff anyway. At least it feels that way. Maybe it's just because we're at level 1. I'm not sure.
Absolutely. And I think, so we're just going to move on from that because we don't have time. But another cool thing is armor, health points, and stress. These are the basics of who your character is. Armor is not treated as an AC like in D&D. Okay. Armor is literally used to mitigate damage, which is a little, more true to form. But what's awesome is that it can break and you have to repair it. And that's one of the things you can do on short and long rests is repair things. Health points, instead of having like a pool of like 10, 20, 50, 120 health points, you have a very small pool. And so then you have these things called thresholds for damage. And so you have a minor, a major, and a severe threshold. And depending on how much damage is done, if it falls within the range of your major damage, you take 2 points of health of damage. If it's over your minor but below your major, you take 1. And if it's over your severe, you take 3. There's another mechanic that if you take like double that, I think it doubles the damage.
Really? I hadn't seen that
it
one.
doubles your severe damage. Yeah, I've got to look that up still. We haven't gotten that far into damage yet, but
right.
And then stress is often used for, using your abilities. Like a fighter may, push themselves to the limit, causing some stress, but they're able to do like a really cool feat. Sometimes, there's not spell slots. It's usually stress, or you just cast it if you have that spell. What do you think? What's your initial impression of that system for?
So yeah, no, I really like it because it actually gives you a choice. It's not just like, oh, you just take the hit. You actually have the option to use your armor, whatever your armor is. So whether you're wearing leather or plate or breastplate, whatever your armor is, it has a value associated with it. And you can, if you use your armor, then you can absorb some of the damage that you take by whatever your armor rating is, and that could take you down from rather than taking 3 ticks, you may go down to taking 2 or maybe just 1. And so I like that you have the option, but then your armor has, so many times you can actually use it before it breaks and you have to repair it at a longer short rest. So personally, I love it. I will say, like, I started kind of thinking through it, and this may be one of my concerns, is it is slightly complicated. I think very easy to get used to, but like say
it's different.
Say you're taking like 18 points of damage and your armor does 8. So you're like, okay, now I would take 3 ticks, but no, I'm going to reduce the hit down from 18 by 8, so I'm going to take it to 10. So now it's just a little bit of math you got to do quickly, which I think would come very easily after a little while. But
and the visual representations will help. I think. So
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
there's another mechanic. We're not going to go into it, but the death mechanic is different. It's really
Hmm.
cool. Read up
It's
on
very
it in the
cool.
rules.
Yeah,
But I really like it. Okay,
it definitely looks very good.
now I want to talk about a few things. We've got about 5-10 minutes left
Okay,
on our
great.
timer here.
Plenty of time.
Uh, first of all, some concerns, gripes. I don't, I don't.
Mhm.
It's in beta. I am
Zoom beta. And
100.
they want to know your
They
gripes. So if
want
you play it and
feedback.
have a
Yes,
complaint, they want your feedback.
they don't want editors. So if
Uh-huh.
you're just like, oh, there's a spelling error, don't send them that.
Don't do that.
If you
No.
read the rules, they say don't do that.
Right.
But yeah, but they do want feedback for sure.
Mhm.
And first of all, I want to say this for like this beta playtest pack
Mhm.
is better than some of the TTRPGs that I have backed and or bought that were fully published and
Fully
released.
published. Yeah,
This is
for sure.
more, even though it's in concept, it's still more polished than a lot of those
Hmm.
things. Um, I am blown away by it. I am impressed. I really like it. I'm not gonna necessarily like stop playing 5e or stop trying other TTRPGs just because I'm like, oh, this is my
Yeah,
one.
this is the one.
But I really like it, and I definitely want to play
Hmm.
it more.
Me too.
That said, there's some things that I have thoughts or concerns about, and maybe they could be done differently. I don't necessarily have an answer for that, but there are a few things. First, let me ask you though: is it what anything that jumps out at you, either from the things that I put in the notes or that I'll just you have on your own?
Yeah, so I'll say the only two things that I thought of immediately upon playing, again, the armor thing that I just kind of mentioned, because whenever I was like going through it in my head, it almost feels like it'd be easier if the armor was like it would just reduce your HP instead of having to reduce like 8 from the damage you're taking, then figure out how many ticks that would be. If it's like okay, you burn one armor and this would knock off maybe one slot of damage, but I think that maybe makes it too overpowered. But that will become easier. But when I was first thinking about it, it just seemed kind of complicated. So that was the one concern, and then the second is I go back and forth on my opinion of like open initiative. I like it for story purpose, but I
Mm-hmm.
also know that every table has a few quiet characters or quiet players that aren't going to speak up, and so I feel like you can very quickly have the louder, more abrasive players take two or three actions at a time before and really some of your other players never act just because they're not that forward. And so but then again, that's something very easily fixed. Even my buddy said at their table when they were playtesting it, everyone had to go one time before someone else could go twice.
Yeah.
So it's very easily fixed, but that is my only concern with open initiative is for quieter players. They may just not get a chance to
Yeah,
speak up.
I think it comes down to the GM and the players to say,
Mhm.
hey,
Absolutely.
when we go into any kind of action round,
Hmm.
and we're using the action tracker, there's
Yeah.
not going to be initiative, but the expectation is that everyone gets an opportunity to act
Hmm.
before you continue on,
Yeah.
unless you have a compelling reason, in which case communicate amongst each other.
Sure.
Like when we played, I had a reason that I really wanted to go after somebody did damage because
Right.
it would mean
Yeah.
that I got to do extra damage.
Yeah.
But I had to communicate it, and if you can communicate it in an RP way, if not,
Right.
then just no big deal. Just be like, hey, I have this ability, so I just want to go after someone who does blank.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's communication. You gotta you
It
gotta
absolutely
open
is.
it up.
Yeah.
Um, but I do understand that for sure.
Hmm.
I think there easily could be tables where people don't communicate that and
Hmm.
people run away with it. So,
Right. And my just immediate thought of what I would do at like at least my in-person table is I would give everyone a certain color token that they would play on the action tracker, and then I would say, okay, no one can go twice until every color has been put on the action tracker at least once.
that's a great example. And
Right.
and that kind of ties into one of the things that I'm concerned with. And I'm sure this will be addressed in time, but at the
Hmm.
moment, if you're not in person, then it really falls on the GM to keep track of
Sure.
action tokens, because the purpose is that you have this action tracker, and kind of like in D&D or Critical Role, when it's like, well, let's roll for initiative. That is like thing that starts combat, I could see this. Well, let me get out the action tracker. We're gonna start keeping track of actions. And it doesn't even have to be for combat. It could be for a social encounter.
Sure.
But having that physically there,
Mhm.
we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna do it
Are gonna do it digitally.
digitally.
Yeah.
And so
And I
that'll
feel
be
like
a concern.
VTTs in time will correct that.
Yes, I think they'll have
We'll
it
have something
eventually.
there, but
But at the same
right now,
time, I think, like you said, having players have different color tokens,
Mhm.
that's a fantastic idea for keeping track of who is,
Mhm.
who's taking turns.
Right.
So no, I think that's great. You could be divided by class or just by players.
Mhm.
Again, love that idea.
Right.
Also, fear tokens being a different color as well, I think
Mhm.
is important. So,
Right.
um, yeah, a couple things that I had is some big questions.
Mhm.
One, so this was one I heard on another podcast, actually, the Pocket Dimension podcast, their live show. They actually talked about one of their people had an issue with the name Seraph, which is kind of
Okay.
it's kind of a combination of a cleric and a paladin, and they
Okay.
use the word Seraph for this class. Like, this is the call to class. And when they explained it, I was like, no, that totally makes sense. I don't like it either now.
Okay.
And the reason is because the word seraph in every definition means angel.
Mm. Okay.
And so they argued, and I agree, instead of using the word seraph for a class, make it an ancestry. I mean, we had the Asimar
Mhm.
in D&D.
Right.
Make it an ancestry.
Right.
If you watch the Critical Role one shot in session 0, one of the first thing Liam does when he chooses to be a seraph is say, "Well, I don't want wings, so I'm not going to be this one." You
Mhm.
know, um, and that's the thing, right? Is that seraph, by definition, is an angel, whereas
Mhm.
in cleric or paladin or any of those other terms are more generic, and
Sure. Right.
um, because you don't have to be a cleric and be an angel. You don't have to be a
Right.
cleric, in these fantasy realms. You don't have to be, in order to be that holy warrior, you could just be a normal human.
Mhm.
But I think it kind of takes a little bit. So I did like that,
Mhm.
their argument for that. And so I'll definitely be listing that in feedback. My feedback is, hey, I think you should change the name of this. But
Right. Fair. Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
I don't know. Like, what do you think? Does it seem.
I mean, I didn't actually make the connection till you brought it up.
I didn't either
Um,
until I heard it from somewhere else.
right.
But
I imagine. I mean, the idea with it being like a cleric or paladin is meant to be like a holy warrior, which is probably why they went with that. But I definitely do. I see what you mean. It definitely feels like the name Seraph or an angel should be more of a ancestry rather than the class itself. Um, I don't know. I'm not too like taken aback by it, but I do get what you
I
mean
just think
though.
there's a lot more. There's a lot
Hmm.
better terms that could be, words
Sure,
that could be
absolutely.
used. So,
Something that'd be more generic for what the
hmm
character is. Yeah.
and also because they've got Guardian, which is kind of like a combination of a barbarian and a paladin.
Sure. Yeah. And and that's what's really cool too is depending on what domain cards you get, you can either go in the paladin route or the
Absolutely.
barbarian route. That was really cool.
Okay, a couple other concerns that I had was so I love the idea of the cards,
Hmm.
but I also kind of question the necessity of them.
Okay.
I think when they release this as a product,
Hmm.
it's going to be a box set.
Uh-huh.
I,
I
I
imagine
don't
so.
think I don't think there's any way around it. I think it's going to be a box set. It's going
Hmm.
to come with all 3 decks of cards that you need. Um, class cards, domain cards, and ancestry and community.
Ancestry community cards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be those cards, and I think it's going to come with it, which is
Hmm.
which is great. I mean, I think they have to provide it in whatever the main box product is going to be.
Right.
Otherwise, it's going to get really. It may not be received as well if you have to buy each of those decks separately.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely not. But when they
Um,
expand, there'll be like expansion packs of cards, I'm
and I think
sure.
that well, and I think they could do an expansion pack, and it could be a smaller box
Hmm.
that comes with those decks,
Right.
and maybe new comes with new ancestries and
Mhm.
new communities
Right.
and new classes. But again, it's not a lot different than having a new book that
Hmm.
adds those things. But it's always going to have to be a box set
Hmm.
because it's going to have to come with cards,
Right.
or they're going to have to sell the cards separately. So
Hmm.
again, I question like from one standpoint, I like the idea of having the visual representation.
Sure.
In D&D 4E, they used cards a lot.
Okay.
Um,
I never played
and it
4E.
was nice because your abilities and your spells, all the rules were on the cards. And that's what they're doing with in
That is nice. I
Daggerheart.
mean, like so far, I haven't thought much about the production side, so I haven't thought about that. But
Sure.
for me, again, working with newer players a lot of time, I love the cards. I love the idea of like as you're building your character, it's like okay, I'm going
Yeah.
to take this ancestry, and I'm going to take this community, and I'm going to take these domain cards. Like to me, like the character building and stuff seemed really fluid. But then I'm also kind of thinking, so do you just take those cards and write all that stuff down on your character sheet and still playing with a character sheet? Or are you playing with your domain cards?
No,
Like
you
how are
have
you?
to. That's the whole thing is that you have to basically have all of
Hmm.
those cards out. Now, not
Right,
all.
right.
You have to have the three for your ancestry, your community, and your
Hmm.
subclass, and then you have to
Okay,
have your 5 domain cards, up to 5 domain cards.
right,
So at any given time, that's going to be the max amount of cards that you're going to have.
right. So at any
Because
time, you're probably gonna have 8 cards out there. But now I'm
right,
thinking,
and then possibly a
either the
vault.
players are gonna have to buy their own cards, or the GM's gonna have duplicates.
Well, I mean that's the thing, right? So if you have two people that want to be the same ancestry
Hmm.
or they
Sure.
want to be the same community, yeah, that's the thing, right? You're gonna
Right.
have to buy extras.
Hmm.
Um,
So I wonder if they'll have like
so
a GM pack, player pack, or something like that
I don't know.
eventually.
I
Or
don't
if
know. I
you,
mean, I could see them having class packs for sure,
okay, yeah,
where they just I want to be a class, and then you have everything except for the ancestries and
hmm,
communities, but all of the class cards. But they did that with D&D. They
sure.
have cards for that. The
Yeah, I
whole
mean,
thing,
I have a deck of cards over here somewhere. I don't know.
absolutely. But at the same time, you can also have all that on a character sheet.
Hmm. True.
Um, looking at the character sheets, even here on Demiplane, it does have them printed on here that you wouldn't necessarily need the cards.
Sure.
Um,
Right. And so I wonder if they'll almost
well,
have it as an
let me put
option where
that.
you can
Let me
just
put
the
that.
card.
Let me change that. On
Hmm.
Demiplane, it has it on here.
Right.
On the practical PDFs that you print out, they are not
Hmm.
there. You have to have the
Okay.
cards.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. You know. Um,
It will be interesting to see as they come more to that like the production side, um, how they'll do it. I mean, I wonder if there'll be an option like if there's a base set of the game where you're just using all handwritten
yeah.
character sheets, and then maybe the upgraded version has the decks of cards with it or something.
And along those same lines, I've heard creators talk about you know, you're going to need a lot of extra bits and bobs for this game. You're going to need
Mhm.
lots of tokens. You're going
Lots
to
of
need
tokens,
hope
yeah.
tokens. You're going to need 2 different color D12,
Hmm.
which that shouldn't be too hard. Most of us have
Hmm.
more than one set of dice.
Sure.
But like you're going to have hope. You're going to have action tokens at the very least. And then if you want modifier tokens, you
Hmm.
could have different modifier tokens as
Right.
well to roll. So that's a lot of bits and bobs. That's a lot of. Again, you can get
It
away
is.
with it super cheap. You can cut out pieces of paper and use that. That's
Right.
that's fine. Um, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like it's gonna take time. We're gonna have to figure it out, see
Mhm.
how it works, and
And looking at what they have at the beta, I'm confident they'll come out with a good way to do it. Right?
I think
Like,
so. But I think and again, in D&D, I mean, I have like 6 sets of dice next to me.
I mean,
So what's the difference between me buying instead of 6 sets of dice,
boxes.
buying 1 set of dice or 2 sets
Mhm.
of dice, and then a couple packs of tokens?
Right.
You know, I
It's
don't
not
think
a
it's
big
a
difference.
I don't think it's a big difference,
Hmm.
but it could be a little bit higher investment
Hmm.
for the players and the
Yeah,
DM.
right.
So I don't know.
It'll be interesting
Um,
to see how they'll do it.
yeah, agreed. Okay. Any other last thoughts?
The last thing that I did want to say, that another feature that I love that we didn't actually hit was experiences. So you actually get two
Yes.
experiences on your character that can be anything you want them to be. It's an actual experience. So you could say that, you're an amazing tracker and you can have a +2. And so anytime that would come into play, you can use a hope to use your experience as being an amazing tracker, and you get to add 2 to your dice roll. Like, really
Yeah.
cool mechanic.
It actually has mechanical value. It's not just
It
character
does.
fluff.
It's not just flavor.
It's not just flavor.
It's actually
Uh,
valuable.
I do love that too. I think
Yeah.
it's fantastic. You kind of mentioned it, but along with experiences, the other thing was the um, what was it? I'm actually trying to find it here on the character
Right.
stuff. It's on details is what it is.
Mm,
Your connections with other players.
that's so good.
They have come up with questions for each class, and it'll be you basically ask these questions of other players and have these other players answer questions that you then put on your character sheet. And sometimes it'll be like, what animal, as a druid, these are my questions.
Yeah.
What animal do I tell you that you remind me of?
Right.
Or what's an affectionate nickname that you gave me? What did you confess to me that makes me leap out into danger for you every time? That I'm just willing to defend you.
Hmm.
And so that's what we talked about earlier when
With connections. Yeah.
making those connections in a session 0 is amazing
Oh,
and
so good.
vitally important, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of ended with this. I think that honestly, with Daggerheart, they've done a lot of things right. It's a very, very good game, and I'm excited to see where they go from here. I'm excited to
Absolutely.
play it more just where it is right now, but then really excited to see is what they change, what they improve.
100%.
So good. Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have for now. In fact, we went over. So, Matt,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry about that.
I'm going to ask that you just let this slide. We missed 2 weeks ago because of just scheduling conflicts. So, hopefully, this extra 15 minutes makes up for it in this wildly popular beta review of Daggerheart by Darrington Press and Critical Role. 100% recommend you checking it out. It's free, after all. And we will have more on it, I promise.
Oh, absolutely.
With that, be sure to check out Love Thy Nerds podcast. We are part of their podcast network. You can check it out on their YouTube channel. They have podcast playlist, as well as in their podcast feed and on the website as well. One of their cool things I love is their Today in Nerd History, which they put out every day for the date of the calendar. And it's about a
Love it.
2-minute video. It's a lot of fun. But with that, we're going to end it. So, from our table to yours, thank you for joining us on the RPG Rundown.
Until next time, may your rolls be epic and your stories legendary.
See you next time.